Thanks for tuning in. We're Ace Comicals. I have with me my co-host Rahul Jani and Leon Everett. I'm Gregdive. Let's get started. Hi guys, welcome to Ace Comicals number 14, and it's time again for us to delve into our picks from the stack, and we have plenty to talk about as always. So without further ado, let's get on with it. So I've got the usual suspects with me today, Leon and Ray. Say hi guys.
Hi guys.
Thank you. So it was SDCC. I guess we should address the giant elephant in the room first. It was San Diego Comic-Con, SDCC for short. At San Diego Comic-Con, they announced some pretty cool stuff. The stuff that stood out, for me at least anyway, being a huge TMNT weeb, is the fact that we are getting this Dimension X thing that I've talked about before, which is this event that's upcoming within the Turtles comics universe, within the IDW Turtles comics universe, and that's going to kick off with issue 73 of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which will be the beginning of Krang's trial for intergalactic war crimes and stuff. And issue 73 is also rather special because it marks the longest running ongoing Turtles comic in the history of Turtles comics, and that is the words of Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz from a video that I watched from some of the SDCC coverage. So yeah, that's going to be pretty cool, and I'll be looking forward to picking that one up because it's going to be rather special for me, I think.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, August 9th, that one. And that also is when we get the first Dimension X book as well, as part of the event that they're running. So it's going to be cool. This week, in fact, for more Turtles news, actually, I'll just bounce off that. So this week, when this podcast releases, the day this podcast releases, which will be Wednesday the 26th of July, we're getting the TMNT Usagi Yojimbo crossover one shot. It has been 20 years since Usagi crossed over with the Turtles in the comic books, and that will be really cool as well, because I mean he's been a regular character popping up, like obviously two separate stories, two separate properties, whatever, but Usagi Yojimbo has been this is Stan Sakai's Usagi Yojimbo, by the way. He's been a popular character that's been popping up within Turtles comics and within Turtles cartoons and things over the years, but it's been 20 years since we last saw him in the comics, so that's going to be pretty nice. We've got a TMNT Ghostbusters sequel that has been announced. So there was a crossover a while back now with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Ghostbusters, as in not the Answer the Call Ghostbusters, the original four Ghostbusters, within the IDW Comics universe for both titles. So the IDW Ghostbusters stuff, which is Eric Burnham and Dan Schoening, which is absolutely fantastic. That's crossing over again, and there's not much of a hint about what's going to happen yet, but there's going to be some stuff involving an old foe, I think, from the Turtles side of things, and a ghost dimension, and obviously the 8 of them have to step up to the mark once again to solve the issue, and it's going to be great, I reckon, because the last one was a real riot. The promo art, we've got a little bit of promo art, just a little bit, and it's kind of a riff on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze poster, which I thought was pretty cool. Except instead of looking at a canister of ooze, the Turtles seem to be examining a ghost trap, and you've also got the 4 Ghostbusters in the background as well. So if you can get a look at that, Egon with his Tobin Spirit Guide, Ray with his Ecto goggles and his PK meter Geiger counter, Winston looking pretty mean, Peter looking pretty bemused, doesn't really care, and then you got the four Turtles just kind of like sort of like crouched over this trap, just like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like Donnie's like deep in thought, Raph's just sort of standing there, Leo's like, huh? And Mikey's got a huge smile on his face as usual because it's Mikey. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. And I guess from that, I'll just segue straight into what we've been reading, or in fact, actually, we've got the Eisner Awards as well. So this is more SDCC stuff. We had the Eisner Awards, SDCC, which are the prestigious comic book awards. I guess you could say they're kind of like the BAFTAs for comics guys, right?
Almost like the Oscars, I would
Maybe
say.
the Oscars, yeah. So this is like an awards ceremony for comics, and the main thing that we took away from this was that Fiona Staples, who does the artwork for one of this podcast's favourite books, which is Saga, kind of cleaned up, didn't she?
Yeah, how many did she win? She won like 3 or 4 in total?
Was it 2 for herself and then 1 for Saga as well?
We got Best Continuing Series,
which was Saga.
Saga 1.
Yep.
So that was Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. And then we've also got, since we're on the topic, Best Writer, Brian K. Vaughan for Paper Girls and Saga. Best Penciler / Inker, individual or team, Fiona Staples for Saga.
Yep.
And also Best Cover Artist, Fiona Staples for Saga, which deservedly so for every single one of those, I think.
Yeah. Best colouring for Paper Girls as well.
Oh, yeah.
Which was pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Paper Girls?
Yeah, Matt Wilson, best colouring, Paper Girls.
Oh, I see, yes. Yeah. The colouring in Paper Girls is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, he's like Paper Girls, Wicked and Divine. Very vibrant and cool colours that I like sort of vibe with. They feel of a certain era, which I quite like.
Well, yeah. But Saga and, more importantly, Fiona Staples getting the recognition they deserve, so that's pretty cool. Well done.
Was there anything else in the list of winners that stood out to you guys?
For me, Jeff Lemire. Mainly because I was a big fan of his New 52 Animal Man and Swamp Thing books, which both of them were really short-lived, and it's quite sad because I thought they were really cool. Animal Man got cancelled and didn't really have an ending. Swamp Thing got brought to an abrupt end. I think it was... I don't know if it was... I'm saying it was a forced ending because that's how it felt when I read it. Because they sort of just like... I think they just canned it and just... But yeah. No, they were really great, and I don't know why they had to come to an ending like that, because I don't think it was... I wasn't happy with it. But yeah, there you go.
But he won for Best New Series for Black Hammer.
Yeah, which I haven't read yet, but I'm probably going to get round to. I need to get round to. So yeah. So I guess we should move on to what we've actually been reading over the past month, I think it is, since we last did one of these.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So, who wants to go first? Shall we draw straws?
Well, if I can jump in there, because one of the guys that stood out from the Eisner Awards for me was Jason Shiga.
Yep.
I didn't quite pick up where I recognise his name from immediately, but I remembered that it was actually... I picked up a book called Meanwhile, just from a cheap bookshop, because this bookshop that's near my house, it has really random selection of, like, occasionally crappy, but just... and occasionally brilliant, cheap comic books, because everything they sell in there is cheap. Picked up the Jason Shiga book called Meanwhile, basically just based on its format. So it's basically like a square hardback book where each page has a different tab on it, and it's essentially a updated version of a choose your own adventure book. So you start off on the first page and you have a couple of choices to make, and you follow these pipes that are strewn across the page, and each pipe leads to one of these tabs on the side of the book, and you flip to that particular tab, which opens up a particular page in that book, and it leads you through all these decisions. And the cover of this book, Meanwhile, claims to have 3,856 story possibilities. I fell in love with it. It's amazing. It turns out that Jason Shiga has a degree in pure mathematics, and it definitely shows from this book. So the fact that he's won for Best Graphic Album Reprint, Demon, I didn't even know he'd done anything since Meanwhile. I'd never really gone looking into it. It turns out Demon was something that he started as a webcomic in 2014, and it completed in 2016. And very recently, I think, maybe in the last year or so, it was available for free in its entirety online. And now he only has the first chapter of, I think, 21. So essentially 720 pages, which were free on his website, you now have to buy in paper format. And I'm kicking myself that I can only read chapter 1 right now, which I have done this morning, frantically caught up on it. It's really cool. It's a story about... Let me see if I can bring up the synopsis for it. So, no matter how hard he tries, Jimmy Yee cannot die. A noose around his neck, a razor across his wrist, and even a bullet to his head all yield the same results. He awakes from each suicide attempt, miraculously unharmed in his shabby room at the Sunbeam Motel. So it's got kind of like a Groundhog Day vibe to it, but it's slightly more mysterious than that. He wakes up and finds his own disembodied head in the bathroom at one point, and at that point, chapter 1 ends. And it says, please purchase the book from your local retailer. Which is exactly what I did. I went out and I immediately bought the first 3 volumes from Waterstones. I think the 4th one comes out in November. Eagerly awaiting that. So that's what I've kind of been reading and hope to be reading in the next few days.
That does actually sound pretty amazing. I mean, what do you think this is going to lead into? Like, where do you think this is going? You said the guy's like a maths guy. So do you think this has got something to do with, like, multiple universes, or...?
I would suspect so. I mean, Meanwhile had a bit of time travel thing going on with it. I suspect that this will definitely have something, because there seems to be this cyclical nature to his day. And it's a lot more adult than I realised he was capable of, because Meanwhile has a very childish look to it. It's about him going through this machine, deciding what kind of flavour of ice cream he wants, which changes the course of his day, you know, flipping a coin and the result of that. And immediately Demon is, about this guy trying to commit suicide in various graphic but also kind of cartoony ways. And it definitely has this web comic-y look to it. So I want to see where that goes. I want to see how he can mix this dark theme with this kind of childlike imagery.
So with the first book you mentioned, it's kind of like... that's like chaos theory, isn't it? Butterfly effect stuff.
There's a heavy dose of butterfly effect in it. Yeah.
That sounds pretty cool.
And just by having stalked him on Twitter this morning, because of doing the research for the Eisner Awards and whatnot, discovered that he's currently in the middle of doing a new book called The Box, which basically looks like Meanwhile on crack. So where Meanwhile opens up into 2 pages, The Box opens up into 3, and apparently that middle section of the 3 pages enables the story to have like an inventory system and something like that, and it looks crazy, and the guy is a genius for being able to make this kind of stuff work. If you can't pick up a copy of Meanwhile physically, there is an iOS app apparently, which is just as good, I imagine. But I love the fact that there's this tangible thing that you can flip through, and if you can find it in hardback, I would highly recommend that.
That sounds really cool. So where do we go from there? I don't think I've read anything quite as mathematical as that.
Well, I caught up on Shirtless Bear Fighter, which you guys raved about. I don't really have much to add, because you guys covered it all the last time.
Be shirtless, fight a bear.
Bear punch.
Everything's a bear punch. I love that every single time he punches a bear, it screams bear punch. Not much to add to that. I would highly recommend it. It's silly, but not as irritating as the name would suggest, I think, which is something I think Leon mentioned the other time. Like, it has a bit more going on to it than just the one-note joke that it could follow. Yeah,
that's the fear that I had going in, is that it would become repetitive, but it seemed to walk that balance really well, and I think I described it as being like an Adult Swim show or something.
Yeah, you did, very Adult Swim, and I agree with you about that, actually. I mean, obviously, I didn't fear anything going into this, because even if it was just a one-note thing, I could laugh at the same joke over and over, because I'm like that. But no. Well, with things like Shirtless Bear Fighter, the novelty would not wear off, I don't think. So, yeah. But no, I really enjoyed the first issue, and I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. And we get number 2 soon. So,
great.
Yeah,
looking forward to that.
Yeah. I am.
Following on from that, I've picked up Winnebago Graveyard number 2, which I believe you did as well, Greg.
Yes.
Not you, Leon.
Yes, Winnebago Graveyard.
I don't know if we can say too much about it because Leon hasn't read it yet, and also our dear listeners haven't.
Well, the listeners, you've got to think about the listeners.
I just said the dear listeners haven't read it, but
how do you know they haven't read it?
It's a very good point.
I've got so much to say about this book, and it's like my mouth is like taped over right now, because this second issue really, really hammers home the horror story thing. Like,
we can speak in broad strokes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think we can speak to how much. I mean, I haven't spoken to you about this, Greg. It's clear that you enjoyed it. I think I also liked it as much as you did. It's really doubling down on the horror theme that it's going for. It still has as much of the creepy. What was the term we used last time? Like a Dutch angle, everything slightly askew that it started off in issue 1.
Yeah,
it's brilliant, and I love what's happening towards the end of each book as well, where it has some excerpts from from some text, which is really interesting, and it feeds back into the themes of the issue that we just read.
There's some creatively shaped panels in this issue that I really enjoyed, and like the events in this one, it's like, so going on how I talked about it last time, where the first one was probably the first half an hour of the horror movie, where it's setting everything up and you get the feeling that something's not quite right, but nothing has happened yet. And it's just sort of starting to tick over and events are starting to fall into place and happen. Well, this is now the second, maybe half an hour for... This is probably like getting into... This is the second half hour of a 2-hour horror movie, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So this is...
I think it's still building up, but now we have there's some rules set in place and there's some characters set in place. And kind of the vibe of what's going on. And
the jig is up. You know what the threat is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said about creatively shaped panels, I just love that there's still some of the stuff that really puts you on edge, like a disheveled mouse in the corner of one of the pages. Just little details.
Yeah, just little things, man.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say, which I was trying to articulate the last time we talked about it, something about the art style and how wavy the lines are and how the colouring goes through the lines a little bit. It reminds me of that the Animatrix episode, Kid Story. You know the bit where, like, I don't know if you... I know you guys have seen it. I don't know if our listeners have seen the Animatrix, but there's an episode in it where there's, like, a kid in school, and there's an action sequence where he gets on his skateboard and tries to escape a bunch of Matrix agents.
Yeah.
And just the way that everything sort of blurs and shifts and goes a little bit wobbly.
It's that really loose, really kinetic style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
and this
works,
has that on page,
works for people running away, works for people, trying to... It works to create a sense of urgency.
And a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that everything in this comic is kind of still, and it's a really off-putting, odd... like synergy between the two styles, and it works really well for this.
I really enjoyed that.
So Leon, pick up Winnebago.
Pick it up so I can talk about it in great detail, like I want to, because it's so sinister. It really is. Like there's points in it where, like, the way it's composed, it just feels so sinister. And we all knew this was going to be about witchcraft from book 1, right? If you've seen any, like, witchcraft based horror movies, demon cult horror movies, this sort of hits all the correct notes. And it's something that it's something that I've been hungry for a while without knowing I've been hungry for it, because I do enjoy that type of horror. So
it's not like anything else out there.
Yeah, nothing like this right now. So I guess that brings us into another book that we've both read. Ray?
Sure.
Yeah.
Which one's that?
Generation Gone?
I'm really sorry, I didn't get time to catch up on that one. I do have it in the stack, and I'll make sure I've had it read for the next issue. And I guess issue number 2 will be out by that time.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
It's
a big book, man.
It is.
It's
a stacked issue. You get a lot for your money with this one when you pick up issue 1, and it's a really, really great story as well. It's a really good, strong start to a cool and promising story about secret military projects and weird stuff involving programming people. So, it's got some really Kojima-esque ideas about it, which is why I'm so surprised you've not read it yet.
Oh, okay. It was more a time thing than anything else. But one thing, because I did try and start it and then I had to put it down because I had to go.
Yeah.
But one of the things I noticed was the front panel leads directly into the main story
Yes,
straight away.
the cover is like, it's like they couldn't fit it all into the book. It's like, we can't have a cover, we've got to start it here.
Like,
so
I've never seen that before, where
it's really interesting.
Integrated straight in. And even when you look at the front cover afterwards, it is basically a panel taken out of another full page. Like, it's kind of cool.
It's a really interesting device. I really like it.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. And it's very, very, very Kojima, and it's got notes. What's that film with the kids that find that kind of like is like an homage to Akira, where the kids find the thing and get superpowers? Chronicle, that's it. Yeah, it's a bit of Chronicle about it as well.
Oh, okay.
This is how I feel about it anyway. I feel that it's got a little bit of Chronicle about it, and it's really good. It's really interesting. The artwork is like, it's this really bare art style. It's stark and graphic, and it's follows these 3 teenage hackers and this guy that works for the US military. Everyone has their own reason for doing what they do. This guy that works for the US military, he wants to do things that are more experimental, but he's at odds with his boss over that. And again, I get, it reminds me of Kojima in a way.
I think that's all that needs to be said.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great endorsement to begin with.
No, yeah, it's great. And
just to be clear, we're talking about Hideo Kojima, as in the guy who came up with Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, I just ramble and I don't signpost things. Yeah, Hideo Kojima. But the writer is Alish Kott, who has done a lot of stuff previously. He's really, really he's been quite prolific actually. People sort of credit him with trying to bring a bit more philosophy and a bit more psychedelic stuff into modern comics. So, but he's done some really, really interesting. He's done some pretty cool stuff actually. He did some Suicide Squad stuff. He did some other stuff on Image, which also got some pretty high praise. So he's pretty cool writer, and this shows it actually. This shows his talent. So yeah, we're into that, and we're into the art as well, which is Andre Araujo, who I think he did some stuff for Wicked and Divine. Might have just done a cover, but
cool.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. His art is great in this book. I love it. I love the stark bare style and the way that it's so graphic and just nice. It's great.
There's another one that we've both read, I think, which I picked up on a whim just because I was intrigued by the title, Centipede, number 1.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually found some time to read that because you asked me if I had, and I felt guilty that I hadn't. You go first. What did you think about this?
I thought it was all right. I thought it was really good. I liked it. I liked the idea of like the last surviving guy being me.
I mean, let's roll back. So it's basically Centipede based on the old Atari game Centipede.
Yeah.
And apparently not for the first time. Apparently there was a previous one from the 1970s or something, or 1980s.
Yeah.
Which this isn't a continuation of, but it's just taking the IP and then kind of running with it.
Yeah.
And it's about a lone survivor on a non-Earth planet that has basically been shaped by Earth popular culture, I guess.
Yeah.
And the protagonist has invented an imaginary friend to talk to, which is us, the reader. And it's just him basically going around and finally plucking up the courage to get some revenge, or get some vengeance for... I was going to say humanity, but it's not humanity.
No,
it's whatever manatee is law.
Manatee.
It's weird, man. It's strange because it's also kind of bland.
Yeah, but he's trying not to die, and it's quite. Some of it's quite. When he describes like his childhood and stuff, it's quite. It strikes a chord. It's quite touching. He's the last lone survivor, and he's like, "Look, I never amounted to much. I'm not anything special. I was a slow starter. I got too into Earth stories, read a lot of comics, and now I'm here on my own." It's got like elements of comedy about it. It's this is why I enjoyed it, because it's just a bit out there, basically.
Yeah, and it's very tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
It knows what it is. It knows that it's taking an IP that has very little to it.
I like the idea that Because I think they've done another comic that's based on an Atari game as well, but I can't remember what that is. Quite recently, they released another one. But I like the idea of taking something that has little to no premise or story and trying to give it one. I like the challenge. That sounds like something that'd be quite fun to do as a writer. Like, oh, you know that video game Centipede, yeah? Yeah. Can you make a story about it? It's like someone makes. I like the idea of that someone makes a video game with no rhyme or reason to it, and then they just task someone with making a story up around it. Because when I was a kid,
whatever you want around it, couldn't you?
Yeah, because when I was a kid, I used to play like these games on the Sega Mega Drive and stuff that had little to no story. You were given a basic theme, like a character name. He has to get to the end of the gauntlet because he wants Object X to keep it out of the hands of bad guy Y, and you don't know much other than that. So I would, in my head, as I'm playing it, create all kinds of weird stuff around that. And I used to enjoy doing that. And I enjoy reading it as well when other people have done it. So yeah,
it's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be picking up number 2, but I'm not disappointed that I picked up number 1. Mostly, or not mostly, partly because the centerfold advert was for a John Wick comic that's coming out in September, which I didn't know about until then. So I mean, I'll keep my eyes out for that next time.
So you're only happy about it because it told you about something you actually want to read.
I mean, not only happy, but it brought me onto that, so that's kind of cool. I've got a couple more that I want to kind of rush through, just otherwise I'm going to eat up too much time.
Go for it.
I picked up Secret Weapons, number 1 and 2, which is by Eric Heisserer and Raoul Allen.
Yep.
Basically, it's like another Future Mutants type thing, based on... So basically there's a bunch of kids who have mutant powers, but they were taken by a mysterious corporation and then abandoned because they weren't powerful enough to justify maintaining them, and so they were just abandoned to some mysterious evil that's trying to capture them and kill them. And the secret weapon, the titular secret weapon, is a woman called Livewire, whose goal is to try and save these kids and unravel the mystery of who's going around trying to murder them. That's it in a nutshell. It's really cool. I love the art style. Basically what brought me onto it was the covers, which are really vibrant, and like the first one is a bright pink and the second one's a bright orange. I don't know, I think I need to go through them one more time just to get the feel of them, but they were interesting. I would recommend you check them out if you like those kind of stories about mutant kids. And the next one I want to talk about is Clue issue number 1. I picked up issue number 2 as well, but I haven't had a chance to read it. But basically, if you guys like murder mysteries, you will love this book. It is meta as hell. So basically, this comic book knows that we know what Clue, or aka Cluedo in the UK, it knows that we know what it is, and all of the associated tropes with the board game Cluedo. And it's basically the same trope about these guests who have got the names of colours, having a dinner party, and then one of them gets murdered. The butler, Upton, knows he's in a comic, but he also knows that the guests don't know that they're in a comic. And then when a murder occurs, which Upton knows is about to happen, but it doesn't happen in the way that he expects, or when he expects it to happen. And it's just a mind mess the entire way through. And the unique thing about the first issue is that depending on which variant cover you picked up, you'll get a slightly different ending. Which, I don't know if it's a way to just sell more comics, but my ending was pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to reading number 2 as soon as I'm done recording this with you guys.
But how do you know when you start number 2, if that's going to follow on from the ending you've just read? Because that's going to be really jarring.
No, I think it's 3 separate things that are happening at the same time at the end of issue 1, which then simultaneously happening in the story and then lead on to stuff that happens in
that would annoy me.
Because I think it's annoying me, but I'm also kind of on the high of how much I like how self-knowing this story is.
It's a nice touch.
Isn't that also a nod to the cinematic release of the film Clue, where different cinemas had different reels put on the end, so they had different endings?
Yeah, and I think it doesn't quite follow it through the way that the film did, because it's not actually the ending of the story, it's just the ending of this first section. I don't know if they're going to do it again at any point. I kind of hope not, because I don't want to have to buy like 5 different issues of the same... So 5 different copies of the same issue just for the endings, but Yeah, maybe I can find what the other two endings for issue 1 were. But yeah, I'd recommend this if you can pick it up on digital or whatever, because I don't know if there's many copies left. It took me a while to hunt down issue number 1. Highly recommend that. And then the last one I wanted to get to, which I believe Leon has read as well, which is the thing that I've been gushing over the most this entire month, is Ms. Marvel. And I've had the chance to read all of volumes 1 to 4 so far, I think. But Leon, have you got that far?
No, with this book, this relaunch series at the time, I think I read the first 2 volumes, and I recently reread volume 1 just because I thought it's been a while, and there's a lot of interesting relevancy with this comic, so I decided to dip back, and with the hope being that I would read this whole run, because I think it was last year they started the second phase of the run.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, rereading it has been an interesting experience because it's not really been a case of rediscovery, seeing things that I didn't notice before, but instead it's been a nice way to sort of delve in and soak up the world a bit more. And I love what G. Willow Wilson's doing with the character in the first volume, and what happens in the next one as well. But I just think that as a sort of fresh origin story for this character, Kamala Khan, Pakistani American Muslim teenager who is a fan of the Avengers, Captain Marvel in particular, and then suddenly, after a crazy fog, suddenly starts manifesting shape-shifty powers. I think it's a cool sort of play on that sort of Spider-Man trope of being like a high school superhero and like having to get your homework done while also fighting crime. And she's very much a neighborhood hero like Peter Parker is. But I think one of the genius things about these books are, I think they really capture that sort of high school, and it's silly to say, obviously I never went to American high school, especially not in Jersey City, but I think they capture what your mindset's like when you're that age, and how you only see so far. You can't see the forest for the trees. Like, you only care about the next big milestone. You want to be popular. You want to be accepted, and there's a lot of interesting things covered, and commentary on what it's like not only being like a teenager, but also being like a minority teenager, and on top of that also being a Muslim American teenager in America, and sort of the way those different things intersect, but also the fight between, well, not the fight, but the tension between coming from like a religious home and interacting with like a more secular world, and the push and pull you have on that with like family responsibility and culture, but also being like Western and wanting, not identifying as a Western person and not as a Pakistani American or whatever. I think it's quite cool how it explores that tension, but also it doesn't make it this weird sort of soapboxy, like we have a message type thing. She's an actual character. She makes mistakes. She doesn't think things through. But ultimately, she's a nice person who wants to do good by people, and wants to do well by her parents, wants to do well by her friends, and wants to keep the little guy safe and look out for them. And I think they really sort of introduce you to this world in such a nice way, and I like how lo-fi it is, and in the earlier books anyway, the disconnection she really has with the wider sort of Avengers Marvel world, and how she's just sort of doing her own thing in Jersey City. And I think that good shout outs to Adrian Alfona, whose art I just, there's something really just, I know there's something sort of nostalgic about the art. It reminds me of comics, reading comics when I was like a teen, I think, and I can't even remember or pinpoint which actual titles, but there's sort of like a warmth to it that I quite like, and that's like accentuated by Ian Herring's colour, which has this nice sort of natural sort of not really muted tones, because at times they're very colourful, but I know nothing's really drab.
Sorry, I didn't mean to keep interrupting. I was going to say it's not shiny like the regular run of Marvel comics. It's got like this. When you say muted, it's not vibrant. It's just, it's not trying to be hyper real. It's trying to be slightly more cartoony.
Yeah, it's more like down to earth, and like I remember at the beginning, and I had it this time on the reread. At first, like on like long shots, like when people are in the background. Alfona likes to do like this sort of cartoony like dot eyes and like smiley face type thing, and at first it really sort of jarred me, because I'm like close up and in mid shots the art is really cool and designed, and everyone has really cool descriptive features, expressive features, sorry. But then after a while, you sort of, for me anyway, I just sort of gelled with that cartoony style, and I know it adds a bit of a charm that I think's missing elsewhere. Like in other comics, that would deal with like a similar subject. So yeah, it's quite a nice reread, and I'm definitely re-hooked to read the rest of this run and move on to the next one. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've got all the way up to volume 4, and it's getting more and more impressive as I go along. And like, I think I gushed enough about volume 1 in a previous episode, and how much having this Asian immigrant experience and how it relates to me, because, you know, being a first generation Indian, there's a lot of things that she goes through with her parents that are very, you know, that touch upon things that I've felt as an Indian growing up in England. And it's amazing to see that. I think one of the things I tweeted to G. Willow Wilson, which got a response, which I was over the moon about, was how they use this language that's so familiar to me, but in a way that they don't have to explain it. Like her mum uses the word beta, which is like a term of endearment to your children. And it's just lovely to see that in a comic. I've never seen that before, and it's, I don't know, it just warms my heart. And yeah, to what you were talking about with the artwork, it's got a bit of whimsy to it, which I think, like you said, is missing from other works. And I like that it keeps shifting. It slightly shifts styles, like it plays with the borders of what it can get away with the style that it's set up. And I love Kamala Khan's expressions. Like, she's constantly shifting her features, and everyone's just got like this strange, funny, like cute look on their face all the time, which I love. The more I read from this, the more not adult. I don't think the word adult is what I'm looking for. I think it's slightly heavier themes start to play in. So, for example, Volume 3 seems to be a little bit more about personal disaster as opposed to external disaster. So it's things that are happening in her life that she has to learn how to deal with as she learns to deal with her powers as well, and how she can be the best version of herself while coping with all of this. And it's pitch perfect. And I really think you'll enjoy it from here on, and I can't wait to pick up volume 5, and I think it's all the way up to volume 7 now, so I've got stuff to catch up on.
Check you guys out up at volume 5, and I've not even started it yet, which is pretty shameful to be honest, because you guys have been banging on about this, and I really do need to check this book out. I really do. It is on the list, I promise you. It's just I need to read it. I do, especially like hearing you guys gush over it twice now, and me not even starting it. That's shameful.
I mean, there's so many elements to it that I think speak to a lot of different people, and I know I keep going on about how I relate to her because she's a Pakistani character, and that, you know, that has tangents to my lifestyle. But aside from that, the way that it links into the rest of the Marvel universe, and just her character as being slightly like this adorable dork, and the cast of characters in her life that have to, that bounce off her behavior, and I just love it. I think it's such a positive story, and she's a really great hero, with just how much good she's trying to do with the power that she's been given, and it's great. I just love it.
We need more happy heroes.
Definitely.
We need more happy heroes. None of this like, super hardcore angst stuff now, man. We need more happy heroes. We've got a lot of hardcore angst with heroes nowadays. A lot of like real like hardcore angst, and I think it's nice to have, the occasional, as I term it, happy hero. So yeah,
I mean, and she's like vulnerable and strong and flawed and well-meaning and everything all at the same time, without it being too heavy-handed on any one of those things. She's just a kid who's trying to do the best with it, and I don't know how many more times I can say I love it. So let's find something else to move on to.
Yeah. So, I mean, curse words, right?
Yeah. Curse words.
So, I mean, I'm on issue 6 now, and you guys have just read the first TP trade paperback. So you guys are at issue 5, right? At the end of issue 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, what are you guys thinking so far? So I want to soak in what you guys have got to say to me about where this is going, because I love this book, and this is one of the things that I most look forward to each month. So let's hear it.
You're loving this, aren't you, Greg?
Yeah.
You're loving hearing that you've recommended something that I've absolutely fallen in love with. It's really good, man. Like, it's everything that I look for. Like, we were just talking about like vibrant and happy stories. Like, okay, it's not quite on the same happy scale as Ms. Marvel, but it's still like got a positivity and a vibrancy and a non-dour, non-emo, like colourful cast of characters and storylines that I just adore. I think it's brilliant. Leon, you say some stuff about it, because I'm just going to push hyperbole.
Well, it's a confident title. It's a confident book. Like, the writing is confident and fun, like sly and wise. The art is like page after page, just really well composed, and like the framing backs up the more funny elements as well. Like, I think just the whole team are working together to pull off something that I know just on paper the idea is ridiculous, but like, and I say that like on paper, it is on paper, and the idea is ridiculous, but they're making it work in such a good way. I mean, this is such an easy recommendation. Like, I don't think there's any sort of prerequisites, really. It's not like, oh, are you into this type thing? Are you into this? Are you into this? Like, you just read the first issue and see how you feel, because I think it will grab you, and because I think humor is really good at that. But I mean, it handles a lot of like interesting themes, and there's a lot of like smart character stuff going on in like from issue to issue. But yeah, it's tough because I'm trying to move away from... Well, not trying to fully move away, but like I find reading one issue month after month like increasingly hard. And I mean, this goes across the board, but like it is hard with this title as well. So I did wait a couple months, and then I read the first 2, I think, 2 or 3, and then I waited until the trade was out and then caught up on the rest. But yeah, it's tough because I want to wait until the next trade, but I mean, this story is going, so it's going to be tough. But
can't afford
that's a full recommendation from me.
You can't afford to wait for the next trade, man. Pick up issue 6.
Yeah, man. If you
keep the hype train rolling, keep the hype train rolling, man. Team Margaret. No, I do really love this book, and so like issue 6 is it's. Don't know if it's not really the start of a new arc. It's kind of like a direct continuation from the events at the end of issue 5. It introduces some really interesting new characters, and we get to see some cool things, some funny scenes. There's things I want to talk about and things I want to like describe to you guys, because I think it's really, really wry and cool, but I can't because you've not read it yet, and it would just totally spoil it. What, in broad strokes, should we go through like what you guys like the first 5 like events so far. Like, what do you guys reckon?
I mean, one of the things that I wanted to say about it is how good it is at building the world that he's fallen into. Like, the world that he's from and the world that he's an alien as a part of. And sometimes when you have these fish out of water magic stories, it doesn't, like, the rest of the world doesn't react to the new magical thing in it. Either realistically or in a way that's entertaining, or, just makes... What's the word we use a lot? Verisimilitude. Is that right, Leon? You would
Verisimilitude?
Yeah, that's the one. The thing that makes it like a decent replica of reality and truth within the context of the story. And this really nails that. Like, the way that he's brought into the world and how we see his introduction to it and then his growth in it and what it means for him, this guy, a wizard, essentially, how he has power, gains power, and uses power in a world that doesn't have magic aside from him. It all just works really well, and it just makes a lot of sense. And again, because it's funny, it kind of helps ease that thing in. I was just really impressed that I didn't feel put out by any of that in a way that I sometimes do with magical stories, just because it doesn't always sit right. Yeah, and this does it perfectly.
And there's very bright, very vibrant colours in the book as well. It's just like pops off the page, and it's just what you're saying about the way that they sort of introduce him to the world and the way the world reacts to him as well. Like, I can't say it without spoiling the whole story, which, come on, can we spoil it? Can we talk about it a bit more deeper?
Nah, there's no need to, really. I think enough. The hype that we've sold it, I think.
Yeah.
People who've been listening to the show, they know our thoughts and feelings on that, and if they gel with us on any of the recommendations we've given thus far, they're going to try it out. I mean, it's definitely worth picking up.
Things are getting intense, especially where like up to issue 6 now. Things are getting intense. Everything's sort of cranking it up a gear. It's getting really good. Hurry up and read issue 6.
All right then, I'll get right on that.
Yeah, which so I guess that brings me on to another one from Image Comics that I'm really excited about, which is Kill the Minotaur, and we're on issue 2 now. And again, things are getting intense. Things are sort of like stepping up a notch, because this is where we actually get into the maze. So we're in the maze now, and we're seeing some really cool things and some really cool ideas and a really fresh take on this ancient tale. It's like a real modern horror twist to it, and it feels original and still remains familiar, which I think is really cool. The colours and the art, just great. And there's this real sort of like, because it's like things that shouldn't be organic are organic and living in a way, and you get this from the artwork from page 1 in the book. You're like, there's something not right about those walls, and stuff happens, and yeah, it's got this Cronenbergy Geiger-ish quality about it that just makes it like great as like an homage to modern horror, and at the same time like a modern monster movie, modern horror movie, and at the same time it's still the story of the Minotaur, which I really, really, really enjoyed. Did either of you guys pick up issue 1 at all?
No, I didn't.
No. Oh, you should. It's great. But yeah, I mean this is what I'm enjoying about it so far. Again, it's another horror comic, but it's a horror comic that's rooted in a timeless tale. But they've done something so fresh with it. It doesn't just feel like you're rereading the Minotaur story. And issue 2 particularly introduced some really fresh new ideas that I don't want to talk too much about now because I will spoil. And the last one on my list, which I don't think either of you two have read again now, is Groo, Play of the Gods. Now, I picked this up on a whim because it was in issue 1, and it looked interesting, and it's got Stan Sakai's name on it. So I thought, yeah, we'll check this out. It's it's actually Sergio Aragones or Sergio Aragones. He's a really celebrated comic artist actually and writer. He's won multiple awards, and Groo has actually been going for quite a long time. I hadn't realised actually, and I'm quite sad about the fact that I haven't discovered Groo before now, because it's really, really fun. It's got this kind of like Asterix the Gaul style quality about it, and Groo is this he's this barbarian who, everywhere he goes, you get the feeling that disaster follows. And he's like a really powerful fighter. You know, people are scared of him, but he's also really stupid. So it's easy to trick this guy. And he has this pet dog called Rafferto. Rafferto is a little bit smarter than Groo, but not enough to make a difference. And this story, Groo, Play of the Gods. So this is part one of an ongoing story in Groo's world. Starts off with some refugees who have come to a city to escape disaster and stuff that's going on in their homeland, which you get in the book. It says they're coming here to escape Groo, because Groo has been there, and they're like, oh no, it's Groo, let's all ship out. But it's got this really interesting take on the way other religions treat each other. So if you go to specifically Christianity, actually, the way Christianity treats other religions around the world, especially Christianity as part of a state. So it's like, our religion is the one true religion, everything else must be. And it's quite good satire of that. When these refugees turn up and they've got their own religion, and these guys are like, wait, no, they can't have that. It's like undermining our religion in our state, and you know, we must keep hold of our control. And it's just there's a line in here where it's like, Diothos demands that he be recognized for what he is, the one and only true God, and he be venerated. What do we do to those who do not love him, and in his message of love and compassion, torture and slay them? Which I think is great, and it's like a really good comedy comic, and it's done in such a way that it's really clever satire. Because then later on in the book, these same priests who were talking about how these people coming to their land and bringing their religion are wrong and should be herded up and imprisoned and, you know, made to worship the one true God, are then talking about sailing off to the new worlds that they've found and imposing the one true God on people that have their own religion in their own country. Which, it's obviously like a really sort of like a little bit on the nose, but a really good satire of the way Christianity has treated the world throughout the ages. And I think it's pretty cool. And I was really enjoying it. I was really enjoying reading it. I was enjoying the comedy. I like Groo. I like his obsession with cheese dip, and the way that he's so easily led and well-meaning, but at the same time, he has a bit of he's a really powerful warrior, and he's a bit of a, like, people are scared of him. You know, they're scared to have him. They're like, we don't want him walking around our town. There's a really great bit at the beginning where he walks into an inn, and the entire inn clears out, and they leave all the food here, and it's like, oh, well, you know, it's nice of them to leave all this food out for me, kind of thing. And he doesn't even get it that they're scared of him. It's just like, oh yeah, your reputation's kind of precedes you, Groo, which is what his dog says to him. But yeah, I love it. I did love that. It's a fun little book, and I will be picking up the rest of it, and I think you guys should read it as well, because I think you'll enjoy it.
Sounds like the kind of thing I'd look at once the trade's out.
Yeah,
so
no, it's
I'll
cool.
keep it on the side.
It's cool, yeah. That's Dark Horse Comics, by the way. And the artwork is like really cartoony, and the way they draw the gods, actually, and some of the designs for the gods are pretty cool as well. I like it. So I guess it's just whatever's left on Leon's list now.
Well, yeah, I won't take too long because I'm aware of time, but I'll just briefly cover these. So while I was rereading Miss Marvel, I decided I wanted to, like, there's certain comics which I've read the first volume of a couple of years ago, from like writers that I liked, superhero comics, and I wanted to continue with them, and I never did at the time. So as with Miss Marvel, I thought now was a good time to sort of jump in and continue. So the first one, these two are both Gail Simone comics. First one was the first volume of the New 52 Batgirl from 2011. Mm-hmm. So the first trade was called The Darkest Reflection, and the art's done by Ardia and CF, and the pencils are done by CF, and then the ink's done by Vicente Cifuentes. But it's quite interesting because as it's a relaunch after a big event, they're able to sort of reset a couple of things. So it continues on. It's like 3 years or so after the Killing Joke, and Barbara, as she's regained her ability to walk after being paralyzed by the Joker in the Killing Joke, and the book's very much about her dealing with the PTSD of that event, but also like, for lack of a better term, like gaining her footing, being Batgirl again. Because, like, some listeners might be aware that Barbara Gordon goes on to be Oracle after she's paralyzed, and plays a big role there in the Birds of Prey and so on. But with this is a reimagining where what would happen if, after this big event, what would happen if she was able to don the cowl again. And it's very interesting. Like, it's very internal. So a lot of it is sort of her inner monologue of her dealing with certain issues. And in those 6 issues, it is very much her reacquainting herself with Gotham City and people being surprised of like her return. And she's dealing with like a crazy sort of mind control plot that's going on, but she's also dealing with like the various people in her life, like being worried about her in different elements. So like her dad, Commissioner Gordon, is worried about her as Barbara, and is because she's just moving out in the first issue and is like unsure of if she's ready to be back after finishing physiotherapy and been able to walk again. It's not been too long. I think the miracle cure that they explain in there happened like a year before this story, so it's all very new for them. So he's dealing with that. You have other people turn up, such as I won't go into too much detail, but other heroes show up who she has a history with, and all the men around her are very worried, and it's more about her sort of coming to the realization that she can't really rely on others. She has to do this herself. So it's very like affirming and very like not pandery. It's very interesting. Looking into the psyche of someone dealing with something like this, and it seems like it's Gail Simone's way to sort of deal with what was a very controversial event that happened with. I mean, we were talking last week about like fridging, and which is a term that Gail Simone herself came up with, women in refrigerators. Whereas like female characters dying or being abused to activate or like cause
actualize.
Yeah, like to actualize or cause a male hero or protagonist to take action, and that's essentially what happened with Barbara Gordon in The Killing Joke. And it feels like Simone's found a way to keep that history, but like change it into something more positive, and it's someone overcoming a previous not tragedy, but a previous horrible event, and being able to move past it, but also learn the lessons of everything that happened associated with that. So it's very interesting, and there's a lot of sort of cool references in there. There's like a really cool sort of Enter the Dragon reference in there, and the interactions with the people that we know and the new characters are really good. And it doesn't. I mean, I've complained on here before about some stuff feeling like comic-y in a way where there's loads of gaps of logic, and it's sort of like lots of relating to like, and an issue 200 and da-da-da. And this doesn't have that at all, even though it includes that history. Like mentioned in episode 2, where we're talking about Black Panther and how Ta-Nehisi Coates kept all the history and used that as being the history of the character and used it to build and move the character forward. I feel that Gail Simone does that here as well, and it's equally successful in how it works. So if you've not read it, or if you're interested, and especially with this Batgirl movie coming out in the next couple of years, Josh Whedon directing, I'll definitely check it out. It's a very good starting point for a really smart way to reboot the character. And like I was saying before, the art is really cool. It has this really nice vibe, and I don't know, everything's like striking, but also not really esoteric or drawing attention to itself in any weird way. It's more like really expressive action beats and body shaping. So yeah, I quite like it. I'd recommend it. And then I also read Gail Simone's Wonder Woman run, which was back in 2008. So the main arc that I read was The Circle, which is one that I had recommended to me before, but never got around to properly reading it. So with this is completely different from the Batgirl issue, whereas the Batgirl is the starting of a new sort of incarnation of the character. This arc itself sort of picks up in the middle of a volume. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and like not really lots of editor notes, but there's a lot of stuff in play. So there's these super intelligent gorillas who have a relationship to Grodd, and thereabout. You've got Nazis as well as Captain Nazi. A bit on the nose name for that guy when he picked his names, but I guess he wanted to be the number one. But so you've got them, and they're not introduced as new. They're like, these guys are back. And having not read like previous incarnations, I'm like, okay, so this is the thing. So it's all very comic-y in the way I was talking about before. But you kind of just go with the flow, because the main like crux of the story is on Themyscira, and it's mostly to deal with telling the story of these 4 warriors who were part of Wonder Woman's mother. What's her name again? It's Hippolyta, yeah. They're part of her like Supreme Guard, and what that is an exploration of like sisterhood, betrayal, honor versus responsibility. And you have these 2 stories playing out, and the Wonder Woman story is she's got the secret identity, she's Diana Prince, and she's working with a CIA-like group. And then you have the stuff on the island, and those stories start to converge. But like, yeah, the stuff on the island is really interesting, and it's like very like literary. There's a lot of there's a lot of like poetry, really, and there's a lot of evocative descriptions, and feelings aren't just stated. Instead, there are allusions made and allegory. So yeah, it's quite it's not as quick as a read as something say like Miss Marvel, which is set contemporarily, and people are just doing X, Y, Z and dealing with that. But this one, there's a lot more weight on it, and considering these are people who live for centuries, it makes sense. So, while I wasn't as fond of the earlier like Wonder Woman stuff that's going on, when things start to converge, and this is a 4-part story, when things start to converge, it all starts to come together in a way that I quite liked in the end. So it's interesting because this is like a 9-year-old book, but I don't know, like elements of it I could see being adapted as part of a cinematic storyline. But yeah, it's an interesting read, definitely, and the trouble with that is that it makes me want to go back to the beginning of the volume and start catching up. So it's like, man, I'm just buried in old trades. You guys are buried in new comics. I'm buried in old trades.
2008 was 9 years ago, and I remember seeing an NME cover about Nevermind being like 12, 15 years old or something, because they do it. I'm sure the NME do it every summer where they get Nevermind out, and they're like, oh, this Nirvana album's like this old now. But like, I remember seeing an NME cover like years ago. It must be years ago now, but it doesn't feel like that long ago. It's like, oh yeah, Nevermind is like 10 years old or whatever.
I know you're turning 30 soon, Greg, but you don't need to bum the rest of us. Like, we're old, I get it.
I know, but it bums me out when Leon turns around and says, oh yeah, it was in 2008 and it was like 9 years ago. No, yeah. So yeah, we've quite a lot to talk about this time, I guess, with all the stuff that we've got around to. So just very quickly, let's bang through some of the stuff we're looking forward to. So today, if you're listening to this podcast on the day of release, which will be the 26th of July, we have the conclusion of Namwolf, which is Namwolf number 4. Redneck number 4 is out today as well. So if you've been listening to me ramble in previous podcasts, I've talked about Namwolf, I've talked about Redneck. Issue number 4, both those out now. There's some really nice revelations coming up in Redneck, some really good stuff about certain characters that is quite interesting, that I'm looking forward to reading, and I really want to see how Namwolf ends up, because it's been a really fun, crazy monster movie roller coaster, and I'm quite sad that it's ending, but at the same time I'm excited to see what happens. Ray, you got some stuff to look forward to?
Yeah, following on from Leon's Gail Simone binge, looking forward to Crosswind number 2. I think I talked about issue number 1 last time. I was really impressed with it. I'll be picking that up. I'm sure there's more, but I'll probably tweet about what I pick up tomorrow, because it's not fresh in my mind right now. But that's the main one I'm going for. Yeah. I'm going to be tweeting some pictures and some lists tomorrow when I get round to it of the things that I'm going to be picking up. So yeah. There's and Shirtless Bear Fighter 2 comes out as well, right? Is that tomorrow? I believe so. If not the 26th of July, then the week after. I thought that was August. Shirtless Bear Fighter 2. I think it's August. Then. Yeah, but we'll see. So we've also had a question to answer. That's right. We've had something sent to us by a listener. So we had an email and a question. So this is an email from James. Big fat spoiler warning if you haven't yet read Spider-Man Reign. And he starts with, "Hi guys, thanks for doing the show. It's a good job of keeping me awake. It's doing a good job of keeping me awake during some of the duller moments in work. I think this week's podcast is the first one that featured a book which I had read. I'll start by admitting that I haven't read The Dark Knight Returns, so straight away I don't have that to compare it to. I may try to pick a copy of it up at some point in the future though. As for Reign, I enjoyed it a little more than you guys did. For me, it was a different take on Spider-Man that, as you said, showed a possibility of what it'd be like, what Peter would be like, or what he'd be like as an old man. He says what he'd be like as an old man in the email. Poor Peter is lonely and broken, crushed by his secrets after having lost everyone in his life. Aunt May and Uncle Ben are long gone, and he blames himself for killing MJ. He's constantly seeing her at the apartment, talking to her. He even feels that he has to lie to her about being fired from his job, which is one of the things that I mention that in the last podcast where he's talking to MJ. Yeah. He sees her ghost everywhere. Yeah. I liked how he blames the radiation as the cause of her illness.
and although Peter says that this is what caused her to die, we'll never know. Peter certainly has a record for attributing every bad thing which happens to him back to his actions, no matter what. Or every bad thing which happens, not to him necessarily, every bad thing which happens is in the email, sorry, back to his actions no matter what. So he may not be the most reliable of narrators. Either way, the explanation is reminiscent of Dr. Manhattan and Janie in Watchmen. The artwork in the book is very hit and miss, but it was nice to see a rare take on what the characters look like in their future. Doc Ock looked great as a zombie, and Venom is looking fantastic for his age. See, somebody else enjoyed Doc Ock. Somebody else enjoyed Doc Ock, not just me. I think you're probably right about the story being a little jarring at times, and that other bits could have been written a little better. I do wonder if it would have worked better if he had died in the explosion rather than giving it a happy ending. So he also asks us a question, so that's his thoughts on Reign. He asks us a question. He says, I realise that I haven't actually asked a question yet, so here's a nice easy one. Who are your favourite comic characters, and which books best exemplify why they deserve the title? So, guys.
Spider-Man would be my favourite comic character.
Yep.
Definitely not Spider-Man Reign. Well, no, just to go back just a second, because one of the things I really like that James makes a point about is how Peter attributes every bad thing which happens back to his own actions. That's something we didn't address. That's a really valid point.
Yeah.
And about him not being the most reliable of narrators, I might have to go back and reread it with
in a different light. Yeah. I think this is why I might have enjoyed it more than you two, because I had this in mind, but I didn't actually mention any of this when we were talking about it. This is one of the things that I kind of omitted and forgot to say. about it being the fact that this is how Peter is. This is what Peter does to himself. So yeah, in various Spider-Man stories that I've read. But yeah, I think reading it in that light might help a little bit. I mean, it's obviously not. We know it's not the best Spider-Man book ever. We know that.
Yeah, it's not going to change the things that I didn't like about it.
Exactly.
I think
it's not going to fix the glaring holes in the roof, is it? But you know.
Well, to go back to a Spider-Man comic that I think does best exemplify why they deserve the title of my favourite comic character, I really liked Ultimate Spider-Man, because I think that's one of the first full runs of something that I ever read, and it's just perfect from start to finish. I think it's widely known as one of the better, more complete Spider-Man stories, and the fact that it ties together all the mythology that's been pieced together from previous stories, it brings them all into this one unified space. I really enjoy that one. So if you want to read a really good, cohesive, long Spider-Man arc, Spider-Man Ultimate.
Leon?
Ultimate Spider-Man.
You got one, Leon?
Well, my two favourites, well storied, are Spider-Man and Batman. But because Spider-Man's been taken, I'm going to have to go with Batman. But yeah, I'd have to say one of the reasons that I love Batman so much is because he has no powers, and his special ability is his mind, really, and
not his bank balance.
Well, no, because not really. They're not special.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's the force of his will and the fact.
Yeah, like what I find interesting about him is how he uses that stuff to just always be like so many steps ahead, but never in a way that's not compelling to read. So I'd say I don't know. It's hard, like, because I had so many like books. But if I was going to recommend two, which I think, I'm going to break the rules and do two that I think best exemplify why he's the best. There would be Batman Year One by Frank Miller. I just think that really captures like what it's like when he's just there at the beginning and he's making the decisions and he's making the mistakes and he's rough around the edges and he's finally like he's diving into this world after completing all of his training. I don't know. I think it really captures his mindset and what he stands for. And then another I'd recommend in terms of giving you, say, the full gamut of what he exemplifies is The Long Halloween.
Oh yeah,
by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Like, I think that just covers a lot of facets of what makes him an interesting superhero, but also it examines his rogues really well as well. So I think those two books are sort of the must reads.
I think the thing I love about The Long Halloween the most is that Batman can represent so many different facets of like an extreme human psyche, and as you said, his rogues are always an aspect of many of his different extreme facets, and we get to see a lot of the interplay between these various different fragments of his psyche in The Long Halloween. It explores that really well. I love that book.
This is very difficult for me to answer this question. You've already taken Batman, and I was gonna go with Batman as well. So
if you have a different book, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, jeez, this is so difficult.
Surely there's a TMNT or like Usagi Yojimbo or
yeah. There's a cool TMNT arc in the IDW TMNT books, and it's because the books are ongoing, it's not really split up. It's the I guess it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and what best it's just the books in general, as in like I can't pick a specific point in history that or in a specific arc that best exemplifies this, because they all do. I like them because they're highly trained ninjas. They do what they have to do to save the world, but they're also just kids, and they're a family, and they have a father figure in Master Splinter, and it's you know, it's exemplified throughout. It's best exemplified through reading the whole, especially the IDW run, because they hammer home the family thing a lot, and I really like that. I like that they're this happy little unit, and they still manage to find happiness. And you know what, I guess there is a good one. I guess it's the recent Christmas issue. I can't remember what number that was, but it was the one that was put out, I think it was last December, and it's the recent Christmas issue where they have a Christmas party, and even though they're not all on the same page at that point, like 3 of them are following Master Splinter, who is now in charge of the Foot Clan after killing Shredder. Explosive point in issue 50 where there's this final showdown between Splinter and Shredder, and I won't spoil what happens, but there's some pretty sweet panels in that story. A long story short, Splinter's now in charge of the Foot Clan, and Mikey doesn't want anything to do with that, because Mikey's like, we're as bad as them now. Why are we doing this, you know? And I think he's also a little bit cut up with the fact that Splinter actually killed Shredder. You know, he wouldn't think that his hero, Master Splinter, could do that. But at the end of the day, they're still a family, and they still get together as brothers, and they still have a nice little Christmas party. They invite all the mutanimals over. All these different factions, you know, throughout New York, all their allies come together, and they have this nice Christmas party in Mikey's little pad, Mikey's lair, because Mikey's living on his own now. Bless him, because he doesn't want to have anything to do with the Foot Clan. And they still manage to function as a family, and it's great. Donnie's putting the Christmas lights up, and you know, they get pizza in, and it escalates. The story escalates. So it starts off, it's like, okay, we're only inviting a few people, and then like more and more people end up getting invited because they hear about it. The mutanimals hear people talking about it, so they come along assuming they're invited, and it just turns into a big like frenzy party. April's there, Angel's there, Alopex might not be there at that point, I can't fully remember. And at the very end of the story, because even though they're not happy with Master Splinter at this point, he's doing what he has to do. At the very end of the story, Splinter turns up and leaves them a little Christmas gift outside, which I think is a really nice touch. So yeah, we'll go with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we'll go with the recent Christmas issue that best exemplifies why they're the best comic characters, because although they're heroes, they save the city, they're ninjas, they're still a family, and it still shows, and it's great. No matter what happens to them, they stick together. And guess that brings us up to time to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks for your email, James.
Yeah, thanks, James. Yeah, thanks for your email, thanks for your question, yeah. So I guess it's time we wrapped up now. So, that's been Ace Comicals. You can find us on Facebook under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Twitter at Ace Comicals. You can get in touch with us through the Ace Comicals email address, which is acecomicals@gmail.com. You can do like James did, send us an email, we'll answer your question. You can find me on Twitter under @Bato. You can find us at www.acecomicals.com. We're also on WordPress, which is acecomicals.wordpress.com, which is my blog, and also where I'll post links for the episodes. You can find us on YouTube as well. We have the Ace Comicals YouTube channel where there'll be an occasional vlog going up. I'm trying to keep it frequent, so we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, watch the videos. And where can we find you guys?
You can find me on Twitter at Monkeh, so that's at MOONKEH. And I'm a lot more active on it now than I was. I've been promising for ages, and I'm finally starting to update it with quite regular comic-related posts. So yeah, you can catch me on there.
And I'm at Leon Everett.
Fantastic. So that has been a bumper episode of Ace Comicals. Thanks for listening, guys. Ace Comicals over and out.